Well, welcome to mid-December. It's that time of year where I update my winter weather forecast for what's going to be happening the remainder of winter before we get into the thick of it, or the theoretical thick of it. So first off, I always need to put this disclaimer in here specifically for YouTube that this is a long-range forecast and is intended to provide a general sense of what may or may not happen in the coming months. It is not a this is for sure happening, nor is an excuse to not be prepared for anything. Also, I use the same method as I did in what I posted in October, and as a result, no short-term forecasts are used in preparation of this. And that's may or may not be a sneak peek of what may be ahead for this week. Possibly we'll see as we get closer to that particular day. The winner so far and methods section. So the predictions that I made in October are on the left here, while the actual results so far have been on the right. The only prediction so far to have quote unquote verified is the peak wind gust of 49 miles per hour is within my margin of error, 45 to 55 miles per hour. While I don't foresee necessarily anything getting beyond that, it is possible that it could. I'm still going to be grading it as a hit for now. Everything else is technically too early to tell for the upcoming winter. We still have a lot of winter left, so on to the methodology. So I take an adjusted analog year approach using mainly ENSO via the Oceanic Nino Index and confirmed using the Southern Oscillation Index. And because I also extrapolate the Southern Oscillation Index back to 1900, that allows me to use more analog years than the usual method of just solely using the Oceanic Nino Index, which only lets you go back to about 1950. I also use the Pacific and Atlantic multi-decadal oscillations, and I also take a look at sunspot counts mainly to predict what ENSO cycle we will be in. The analogs are also not weighted equally. Analogs that are closer condition-wise to this year's condition will have a higher weighting. On top of that, I will make adjustments to analog years using statistical analysis where appropriate, specifically if there is a statistically likely or unlikely chance of something occurring. Analogs will be adjusted unless if there's a clear contradiction in the analog years to the statistics, in which case I favor the analog years. General trends based on previous seasons, when appropriate, may also be used. And also, as a note, I do adjust the snow prior to the 1970s to a 4.3 inch average per winter, because right at about 1970, that's when Portland snow has pretty much bottomed out to 43 inches a decade. So in order to account for any changes in snowfall before that, I just adjust that. The three general choices that I group each year in are either below average, near average, or above average, with the special category for the outlier years called hyperactive winters, defined as the top 10% of wettest or snowiest winters. And all forecasts will cover approximately 1/3 of all winters recorded, meaning the parameters margin of error will be covering 1/3 of all the winters that have recorded in Portland. So the data on oscillations, first up is the ENSO outlook and the specific models. We are currently in a moderate La Nina, though it looks to be beginning to weaken a little bit. It's still barely in the moderate phase for now, though. That is projected to go back into ENSO neutral late winter, early spring on both the Climate Prediction Center models and their CFS model. And the Australian Bureau of Meteorology agrees with this using all of their global models. January is the first month that it goes back into neutral or borderline La Nina. Keep in mind, since the Oceanic Nino Index takes a 3-month rolling average, it will be delayed about 2-ish months before it gets officially declared ENSO neutral. But by March, it's clearly an ENSO neutral at that point, and I'd expect the February, March, April timeline would be back in the ENSO neutral as a result. As it's most likely a weak or moderate La Nina would be the bulk of the winter, I just thought a comparison between weak and moderate La Niñas would be appropriate. So in weak La Niñas tend to have more variable snow than moderate La Niñas. That means that the ceiling is lower. However, there have been no snowless years, though one was 1/10 of an inch. But the ceiling is higher at 24 inches versus a consistent 2 to 10 inches of snowfall. Both have slightly above normal rainfall, with moderate being a titch higher. Median temperature departure, pretty much near average. Weak is slightly below average, though. The median lowest temperature, the weak La Nina is colder typically. Moderate La Ninas tend to be better with mountain snowfall and mountain snow depth come April 1st, though. Also, as a note, major windstorms and ENSO. If you're hoping for a major windstorm, pretty much you need to hope for an ENSO neutral year, as essentially every major windstorm that has happened in the Pacific Northwest, let alone just Portland, has occurred in an ENSO neutral year. I think there's like one exception, and that's not showing on that graph. However, Southern Oscillation Index the last 5 years confirms that we are in a La Nina currently. The Pacific Decadal Oscillation shows that we are in a negative phase, which will enhance that La Nina conditions in our area. It won't actually make the La Nina stronger. It'll just enhance those conditions over our area for what typically may happen. However, because the ocean temperatures are generally warmer than average off the coast, that may dampen some of the PDO's effects. The AMO is firmly in the positive phase right now and has been for the foreseeable past since about 1995. And the sunspot count, we're about halfway through the climb, and that normally predicts a La Nina transitioning into an ENSO neutral or possibly even an El Nino. I'm kind of leaning La Nina to ENSO neutral, maybe not El Nino until next winter. That's getting way down the road, though. We'll see when we get there. Okay, for the analog years, I've reduced the amount of analog years down to 15. And these are the 15 that I decided. The top analog years are unchanged from October. They are still 1956-57, 75-76, 85-86, and 2000 to 2001. I have changed the weighting slightly, specifically removing a little bit of weight from 75-76. However, not enough weight to knock it out of the top analog years. I still like that better than the other 11 analog years here. So specifically what happened during those top analog years, all the ENSO phases were a third La Nina in a row or a neutral or a neutral year with a negative tilt, aka tilting towards La Nina after 2 La Ninas. PDO was negative in 3 of the 4 analog years, however, one of which was variable and tilted back to the positive briefly, while 2000-2001 was just variable throughout. AMO, the Atlantic Multidecadal Oscillation, only 1 year of that was lining up with the current analog year, and the sunspot count and trend. This is kind of deceiving because it doesn't show where we're at in the cycle. But 1956-57 is the closest to this year. In other words, I really like 56-57 condition-wise compared to this year when it comes to the larger scale oscillations, though these 3 years meet the criteria, especially with the oscillations that affect us the most. And what happened in our area those years, 56-57 had a warm December and February, though it does not look like we're having a warm December based on what's happened so far. January, however, contained the second longest Arctic blast in Portland's history at 12 days, with a low of 6 degrees and slightly above average mountain snowfall. 75-76 had year 3 of a snow drought in Portland, but the South Valley got 4 inches primarily in December with average mountain snowfall. 85-86 had a pretty cold November. I want to say it's the coldest November in Portland's recorded history, with winter part 2 occurring in February. 10 inches of snow were spread out throughout the season, except for January, with slightly above average mountain snowfall. And 2000-2001 contained the driest water year on record, and it was also year 2 of a snow drought with a tenth of an inch of snow, but near normal temperatures and below average mountain snowfall. January was a little colder than the other months in 2000-2001 when it came to the lowest temperatures and the lowest high temperatures. So for the temperature departures from average adjusted to each decade, the median for all the analog years dropped a tenth of a degree to a tenth of a degree below average, while the top analog median, because I didn't change the top analogs, remains unchanged at about a degree below average. This is before I use my weighting formula for the top analog years comparing to the all analog years. The water year precipitation total, the median for the all analog years stayed the same at 33.7 inches despite the reduction in analog years. So did the top analog median at 30.7 inches. Lowest winter temperature remained the same for the top analog median, 18 degrees, but it dropped 2 degrees for the all analog median to 18 degrees. And the one probably most, if you care about the most, the adjusted snowfall totals, where the median actually went up about 1.5 inches to 6.6 inches, while the top analog median remained the same at 2.1 inches. Again, all of these graphs are before weighting. This is just to show the raw data. Before we get into the official predictions, here are the historically significant trends. And don't worry, this won't be as long as it was in October. 5 winters in a row have failed to get below 20 degrees, which is a climate-adjusted and unadjusted record. Chance to exceed 5 winters in a row of this parameter, if we adjust for any climate trends that have occurred, is about 3%. In other words, it's highly likely this is happening. Only 3 winters have produced a temperature under 20 degrees with less than 1.5 inches of snow in Portland, which makes me extremely confident that both of these combined, that there is going to be at least 1.5 inches of snow in Portland. Portland's had 1/10 of an inch so far. Some areas in the South Valley have had 1 inch or more, like Corvallis at 1.1 inches. Second or third La Nina in a row almost always contains a drier winter than the one that came before it. This especially bucks the trend of what is typically a wetter than usual La Nina and happens to contradict the slide I put in earlier about what typically happens for weak and moderate La Ninas, because last winter was the median year at 14.97 inches during the winter. However, fall and spring do not have a clear trend. This means that if fall and or spring happen to be wetter than average, the water year can still turn out to be a little bit wetter than average, but the meteorological fall, September, October, November, turned out to be slightly drier than average. So, continuing on, this 2 winters in a row have contained 6 inches or more of snowfall in Portland, not in the South Valley. Chance of occurring again is about 4.4%, adjusted for the 4.3 inch average per winter that I have adjusted everything else to. However, it should be noted that of the 6 times there have been 2 winters in a row with 6 inches of snow or more, 3 of them had a third, bringing this statistic under question. However, because the analogs don't really support 6 inches or more of snow for Portland, I disregarded this kind of disclaimer here and went with the statistic as my best estimate, though I did raise my margin of error compared to October to have a little bit more than that 6 inch, because there is a possibility that could happen. Now, the official prediction. So what changed? It doesn't look like a lot did. Yeah, I did change a few parameters though not the water year precipitation. That is still below average water year, favored anywhere from about 28 to 36 inches, or about 75 to 97% average. Winter below the median of 14.97 inches. I am super confident in that. The best estimate is about 32 inches or so. Average temperature departure below normal temperatures are favored. I am reducing this to anywhere from about 4 degrees below average to right at average, with my best estimate now 1.5 degrees below average. The weighting changed. When I changed the weighting for the analog years, that favored below average temperatures more than it did in October. Windstorms, a storm or two, peak gusts 45 to 55 miles per hour. The 45 mile per hour, 49 mile per hour peak gust that occurred can count against this total, since this is the same prediction I made in October. And I don't think much is going to come out of this winter when it comes to windstorms. Lowest temperature below 20 degrees with an enhanced chance of an Arctic blast. Best estimate, I am predicting about 13 degrees or so. And the most likely to be active time, January 10th through the 31st. This is probably my wild card prediction out of the 7 parameters. I am not super confident in this one. However, the changes in how I weighted the analogs for December compared to October made me confident enough to make that prediction. On to the mountain snow depth on April 1st, I'm predicting anywhere from about 100 to 150% of normal, slightly above where I predicted in October. And for here down in the valleys, I am predicting normal snowfall, maybe slightly above average, anywhere from about 2 to 8 inches. Best estimate, I am saying about 4 inches in Portland with 0 to 3 snowstorms with an inch or more. And for the central and southern valley, I am predicting 6 inches of snowfall as my best estimate. Chance of every strength of snowstorm that I've categorized is on screen now. And also because a good chunk of valley locations have had measurable snow this winter, I have reduced the chance of a no snow winter, aka bus winter, down to 0%. So that is not happening this winter based on what's happened so far. So that is it for this presentation. I hope you enjoyed. There is a chance that some winter weather may affect your lives later this week. Again, that possible winter weather was not influencing this in any way, shape, or form, as this was the same method I used in October. But it is something to keep an eye out. And if it still looks like everything's on track, I will start videos for that either most likely Monday, possibly tonight. Otherwise, if I don't see you then, I will see you some other time. And please stay safe out there and take care.